Nebraska has a huge game on their hands this weekend versus their dreaded rival, the Iowa Hawkeyes, in the final regular season game of the year. So in today's video, I'm going to give you my preview for Black Friday. What is Iowa bringing to the table? What does Nebraska need to do in order to pull off this upset, and everything else you need to know? So really quick, we have a lot to talk about. Hey, if you're excited about Friday, I know I am, hit that like button. Hey, if you're new to the channel or just a returning viewer, make sure to subscribe. We have the best family here on Husker YouTube, and I post daily Nebraska football content. So if you're a diehard Husker fan, make sure to subscribe. You will be thanking yourself that you did. But without further ado, let's get into it. Previewing this matchup, Nebraska versus Iowa. Both of these teams are bowl eligible, so not too much on the line except for, of course, the Heroes Trophy and bragging rights for a year. So starting off with Iowa, they're entering this game 7-4, but to be completely honest with you, they don't really have any great wins under their belt. Their best wins are against Washington and Michigan State, two 6-5 teams. But really, other than that, they've been pretty much underwhelming this season. We'll get into that. Their head coach is Kirk Ferentz. We know who that guy is. He's been at Iowa for the entire century. But again, we know that he's had Nebraska's number the last decade. And of course, Nebraska's only had one win against them since 2015. That came in 2022. But I feel good about this matchup this year. Let's get it going. Well, this is in Iowa City. Nebraska always plays better on the road versus Iowa for some reason. But it's going to come down to Iowa's offense and how well they can perform. Let's start it off with that unit. Talking about Iowa's quarterback, they are likely down to their third stringer. Of course, they began the season with Cade McNamara. Again, he was just awful. No longer their starting quarterback. They went down to Brandon Sullivan, who honestly played pretty good, but then got injured with an ankle injury, and all signs point to Jackson Stratton starting in his second ever game for Iowa this Friday. He played last Saturday versus Maryland. Honestly, played decent, was a game manager, but overall Jackson Stratton is not a very good quarterback. He only had about 80 passing yards last week. At best, he's just going to be a guy that comes in there, manages the game, doesn't turn the ball over, but he's not going to beat you with his arm. He's not going to make a flashy play. Nebraska is really lucking out here because one thing that was nice about Brandon Sullivan, their backup quarterback, is that he could run. Jackson Stratton cannot run really at all, so he's just going to be a game manager. Nebraska hopefully can exploit this and make him look pretty bad. We know what Iowa's going to want to do, though. They're not going to want to throw this football. They're going to want to run it, and they have some pretty darn good running backs this year. They had 300 rushing yards last week versus Maryland, and their head man is Caleb Johnson, who has over 1,300 yards this year, 20 touchdowns. You know, he's a top 5 running back in America. This guy has been incredible, super shifty, super fast, great vision. He's going to be an NFL draft pick this spring. So Caleb Johnson has had an incredible year. Again, one of the best running backs in the country. Nebraska should be worried about him. And they actually have a really good core as well. They have Kamari Moulton, who's a shifty freshman, had a 120 yards on the ground last week. So, again, they have a good running back room. They have a guy in Caleb Johnson who's one of the best in the country. You got to find a way to stop that and make them pass the football, but we know that running is going to be their game plan. Talking about their wide receivers, honestly, not a good unit here. Their head man or their leading receiver is Jacob Gill, who's 6 foot tall, 190, has about 400 receiving yards on the year, 2 touchdowns. Again, he's fine, not super fast, not super tall, but again, he's just a fine, good route runner, gets open type of wide receiver. We should be a little bit worried about him, but I mean, besides him, there's really nobody else in this receiver room. Their tight end is Luke Lachey. He's been there forever, but he is a really solid tight end. He'll be an NFL draft pick. And then other than that, they have Reese Vanderzee, who's a freshman wide receiver, 6'4", big body type of guy, can get a jump ball, but this is a bad receiver room, guys. Bad receiver room, bad quarterback. They're not really going to want to air this one out in the cold conditions in Iowa City on Friday. Talking about their offensive line to round out this offense, pretty good as usual. They've had some tough years with this offensive line the last 2 or 3 years, but starts to get back to that 2010 mold one of the best in all of college football, top 10 in the running game, top 40 in pass protection. They only give up about 1.5 sacks a game. So Nebraska, this defensive line has their hands full going up against Nebraska or Iowa's offensive line. But overall, again, we know the game plan for these Hawkeyes. They're going to want to run the football. They have one of the best rushing offenses in all of college football. And actually, overall, this isn't a terrible Iowa offense like we're used to. Normally, they barely put up points. They average about 10 points a game. That's not the case this year with Iowa. They average 28 points per game, which is actually pretty good compared to other teams around the country. So they have something clicking right now. Nebraska, again, they have to find a way to stop it. Talking about the Hawkeyes defense, honestly, not as good as it has been in past years, but it's still pretty darn solid. Their defensive line only averages about 2 sacks a game, so not crazy, pretty average there. Aaron Graves has 5 sacks on the year. Max Llewellyn has 3.5 sacks on the year. So again, they're okay in getting to the quarterback, but those are the guys I'd watch out for. They have the 30th best run defense in all of college football. They give up around 121 yards a game. So again, that's going to be what they try to stop is the running game of Nebraska. We know we had a lot of success last week, but again, not really great on this defensive line, at least compared to where they have been. Linebacker core is pretty darn good for the Hawkeyes. Jay Higgins, one of the best linebackers in college football, has 100 tackles this year, 2 forced fumbles, and 3 INTs. And they also have Nick Jackson, who has 80 tackles and 2.4 sacks. So good linebacker core for the Hawkeyes. And then last but not least, talking about their DBs, pretty darn good. They give up only around 200 passing yards a game. Quinn Schulte, Sebastian Castro, guys that Nebraska fans are familiar with at this point, really good tacklers. And they also have Xavier Nwankpa in that room, who is a former 5-star. Been a little bit underwhelming, but he does start for that team and is a good player. Should be mentioned in their secondary, they have a really good corner who's been battling injury this year, and Jermari Harris, who declared for the NFL draft, basically did what Tommy Hill did, said, hey, I'm not going to play the rest of this year. So they're losing their best corner in Jermari Harris. So overall, Iowa, pretty good defense as expected. They only give up around 20 points per game. That ranks 20th best in America. But again, they're not top 10 like they used to be, but they're still top 20. All right, again, I'm going to say my predictions until Thanksgiving. I'll post that video that day, but I'm going to give you my 5 keys to the game. How do the Huskers get this win and claim the Heroes Trophy for the second time in 3 years? Number 1, shouldn't be a shocker. You got to establish the run game if you're Nebraska. You got to have a complementary offense. Run game sets the pass game and vice versa. That's what we did versus Wisconsin. It worked to perfection. Get Emmett Johnson going. Get Dante Dowdell the football inside the 10 and let him go to work. But you got to establish this running game. If you can't run, you can't pass, and you can't score points. Number 2, on the other side of the football, you got to shut down the rushing attack. That's their game plan. That's their bread and butter. It's not going to be too hard to figure out. Make them pass the football because they have a third-string quarterback under center. Number 3, score in the red zone. Nebraska went 7 for 7 scoring in the red zone versus Wisconsin, whether that was via touchdown or via field goal. You got to do it once again versus Iowa, scoring every single opportunity because points matter in a ball game like this. Number 4, you got to be aggressive. We have nothing to lose in this game. Bowl game's already clinched. Yeah, you'd like to beat Iowa, but let's be aggressive. Last time we beat Iowa in 2022, we were very aggressive. You got to do the exact same thing here. Go for it on 4th down, dial up blitzes, play press coverage, play with nothing to lose, and let's live with the results. Number 5, the threshold of points that I think Nebraska needs to score in order to win is 24. If you can get 24 points in this ball game, I think Nebraska basically has about a 90% chance to win. I really feel good about that. It's going to be a defensive showdown, but if you can get 24, maybe 28 points, victory is almost secured. So that's really the benchmark Dana Holgerson's thinking about this week. Of course, you want to score as many points as possible, but 24 to 28, that's what you're looking for in order for Nebraska to win. All right, guys, that's my preview of this ball game. Again, prediction will come out on Thanksgiving. Everybody, let me know down below your thoughts about this matchup. Are you feeling good? Do you think Iowa has a slight advantage? Let me know in the comment section. Hey, if you made this far in the video, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. And as always, folks, go Big Red, go Rhule, and see you in the next one.